G'day all. Can everyone hear me? Uh, just making sure. Yep. Good. Not sure where Warren is. I'll guess he'll turn up at some point. Um, thanks for joining us tonight. And we're going to have a bit of a chat about, some of the things that are happening out there in the good old world at the moment, and just fill people in on where we see things are going and what should be happening and where we should be going. So welcome to tonight and welcome to the GWC. This is a free podcast from us. I'm just gonna um, sorry guys. Oh, is he coming? Anyway, well, we've all seen some interesting things happening out there at the moment, and there's some real terrifying things happening on the horizon that could be coming in very shortly. And Warren decided to join us.
It's called the beauty of Bali internet. 2 minutes to get in, but I got in.
You need portable Starlink, mate.
I know. I know. How are you, Stephen?
Yeah, good. I was just starting to chat to the viewers about stuff, and then you popped in. So
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
I was just saying to him how things, have changed and how rapidly they've changed, and how there's some stuff coming up on the horizon that is just really frightening. So, and to be honest, I've always thought that, we're in a declining period and it was going to decline probably at a rate into 2030, 2032. But, under the current government here in Australia, we've basically jumped, I reckon, 5 years ahead of the destructive cycle in one quick 3 month period.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight because, as you know, and we've had a bit of a why I call this podcast because you know me, we've had a bit of a joke about you always said to me, the day I see you taking options to get a second home and a second passport, then I really know we're in the shit. And of
Yeah.
course, that's what I'm doing right now since the election. And it's I was actually saying, do you remember Stephen 10 years ago in 2015? I even remember the month. I think it was September. We did a webinar together where we actually talked about the coming, of the sovereign individual, what we saw happening and how we saw
Mm.
a crisis and the world collapsing. And we gave a series of steps that we saw coming and the importance of having backup plans, which of course we've done. And of course, we're well into that, and almost everything we said has been happening. And now we're in what
Yep.
I call the government's going completely and utterly feral, which we said that would happen. And eventually, governments would run out of money and just start grabbing it from any which way they could. So
Mm.
I see that's where we are right now. And as you said, if I'm doing something about moving, there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got people that won't talk to me because they know I was right. Right.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
some things you're right on that you don't want to be right. And this is one of them.
Oh, 100%. That this, that this was, I took Plan B measures years ago, and well, actually before it was even called a Plan B, or it was just global citizenry movement when I started, because none of us thought that it would come to this, and then it turned into, you need a Plan B, and you need to start getting your footholds overseas, and you need to start getting bits and pieces here, there, and everywhere. And just before this, I was having a quick coffee with a guy, and he's he said to me, "Oh, you told me 5 years ago to get my Croatian citizenship, and you told me to make sure I had a bolt hole somewhere else, and all that sort of stuff." And he's going, "Oh, I need to expedite it, and this, that, and the other." And he was he was one of the guys that never thought this would happen. So
Well, this is kind of what I wanted to do today, like have a bit of a discussion about the aftermath of the election and really what it shows. And obviously, we don't want to sit here and be a big gloom and gloom. It's more about really spelling out the facts and then what do we do about it practically
mm,
to go forward. And I think one of my favorite statements I've been giving lately to clients, Stephen, it's been my new little catchphrase the last 1 month, is the best money you'll ever spend is the money you waste most of the time. And as an
yeah,
example, every year when I pay for my car insurance, I really don't want to crash my car to claim on it. And whenever I buy health insurance, I really don't think, shit, I hope I get sick so I can, prove that I was right in paying for this health insurance policy. We pay it and we hope we never use it. And so really the kind of stuff we're talking tonight is going to be more stuff that we really hope everyone that invests in doing this wastes their money. So probably the
Yeah.
strangest thing you'll ever hear on a public webinar, but you were actually saying that what we're going to be suggesting and bringing up with you is stuff that we hope is the biggest waste of money and a waste of time.
Yeah. And it's I've always said that when you're structuring a plan B, it's something that is it's an insurance policy. You hope you never have it. You never have to use it, but it's a good thing to have anyway. Right.
Yeah.
And there's uh, oh God, there's guys uh around the place that have been, the doomsday bunker stuff and all that sort of stuff. I don't think we need to go quite that far,
No.
but we need to take good precautions on ground conflicts, like things between war, and there's uh, economic crises. It's not going to be the same all over the world, right? I would say the developed nations are more at risk of total societal collapse or major confiscation of wealth than, say, places like Thailand, like Indonesia, like the Philippines, um, and or some of the emerging Middle Eastern places or Central
BRICS
America
ones.
and so
Yeah.
forth, because they've been through this. Right. A uh, a Nicaraguan guy that I've known for many, many years. We were only talking, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, and he goes, "It's amazing how much communism has gone into the West." Yeah, he
It's
said,
crazy.
he said he never thought he would see it. Right, uh, and that's where we are. Where we are literally seeing the emergence of communist uh, governments. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, it was, dob the red under the bed, right? We got a red in the lodge. He's a card-carrying member of the Socialist Party. Doesn't hide from it. It's all over his personal website and everywhere, that he's a member of the Socialists, and he doesn't hide from it. So what do you think he's going to do? You know, so
Well, it's interesting when you read what the 10 planks of Marx for communism is. And basically, it was things like a heavy progressive or graduated income tax,
mhm.
abolishing rights of inheritance, confiscating properties of immigrants and rebels, centralization of credit in the hands of a national bank, centralizing communication and transport in the state, extensions of factories and instruments of productions and all that. Which like wheat and combination of agriculture, wheat, and abolishing a distinction between town and country, and then abolishing rights in property and land and application of rents to public purpose, and then free education in public schools. So we're pretty close if we're not
Mm.
there.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually think we're there. We're a lot further along than what most people think, and it's
I
only
would
going to
agree.
accelerate. Right.
Well, I
I
would
think it's
agree.
only going to accelerate.
Well, generally we mentioned about that kind of stuff, and it's a good time to just reflect and look at what's happening, and then go, right, what do we do about it? Because I think when you don't know what's happening or don't acknowledge what's happening, you feel this inner sense of dread, but keeps building, and something doesn't feel right, and you feel this anxiety. And that's why I think a lot of people's mental health has been shot in recent times, and people are stressed, is because you feel that impending dread. Whereas when you kind of own what's happening, in a way, it becomes a bit easier. Go, okay, well, now I know what's happening. What can I do about it? Like for me, to give an example, it's all little signs. It was like at COVID, I'd worked out there was a problem so early on. I was doing things about vaccinations because I thought this is going to go bad. But like 3 months ago, and I don't know if I told you this, but I was in Bali for 10 days.
Yeah.
And I can remember on the last day of the trip, I woke up and I had a sensation I've never had before in all my years of living. I mean, and that was, I don't really want to go home. Now, whenever I've gone on trips, I've always looked forward to going home. It's like, oh, great, going home now. It's been a great trip. I'm ready to go back to Australia, ready to go back to my nice little house over in Coogee or whatever. And I thought, I don't want to go back home. And it kind of shocked me. I think, shit, why do I not want to go back home? I, and as soon as I got back home, within days, I thought, I know why. It just feels different. And everyone I speak to in Australia has said the same thing. And I noticed that I was feeling like that. And as soon as I arrived in Bali about, 8 days ago or 10 days ago, I thought, shivers, I already feel like miles better. Like
Yeah.
I'm back, I'm feeling almost back to myself. I'm clear. And that was when I thought, okay, I'm not going to abandon Australia, but I'm certainly going to look at a different options because I was speaking to a client of mine who I really respect him. He's one of these guys. It's not what I call a conspiracy. He's a bit of an optimist, if anything. And he said to me, my 10-year vision for Australia is optimistic. He said, I think Australia is going to be a wonderful place in 10 years from now. He said, I think we're going to awaken. I think people will get fed up with the current governments. He said, but we're not there now. He said, next 3 years is going to be difficult. He said, I've told all my friends either have a second home out the country or get a caravan and enjoy living a bush lifestyle and spend less times in the major cities. And he said, that's what I'm doing. He goes, I'm just enjoying it. I'm still getting on with life. I'm not living in a negative thing in a bunker. But he said, I'm just staying away from the worst of it because I think the next 3 years are going to be difficult. And he even told me this just before the Albo's announcement with the unearned income. He said, they're just going to start taking people's money, Warren. You can just tell. And war's going to increase across the world, and that's going to cause other complications as well. So,
100%. One of the biggest things that I look at is the I'll get this right in a minute. The deindustrialization of the country.
yeah,
Right. The did so the three major things that we need to fight a war, or even just sustain the country, fuel. We've got two refineries left, and one of them's they're looking at shutting one of them. We've
yep,
probably at any one point in time got 7 days worth of fuel stores. The
yep,
other one is the ability to manufacture and remanufacture the equipment that is needed to keep the country going. Trucks, trains, and other heavy machinery, ships, and so forth. We basically have no heavy engineering capability. Very, very small amounts. Not enough to sustain a mass re-engineering effort. And the other one is energy, like general energy, like things that keep the lights on. We are totally destroying all the major energy sources that would make us self-reliant. It's just stupid.
yeah,
And
right.
basically little things like this. And it's and I so I look at it and go, it's definitely on purpose. It can't be anything else. You can't be in public life or a bureaucrat and allow things to get this bad and not think that it's not going to damage the world, right? So it's got to be on purpose, 100%. There's no ifs,
Yeah,
buts, maybe.
I would agree with that. It's
Yeah.
on purpose. I Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've read, but there's things like about the learned elders of Zion and the plans and all that kind of stuff, and the Khazarian Zionist plans and all that. I mean, we could go into that, but we don't need to. I just think that, yeah, I think it's planned as planned can be.
Mm. Yeah. And if you have a look at it, a lot of people keep saying, oh, it's the WEF, it's this, that, and the other. It's actually not. The WEF have fuck all. Um, uh, the one thing that I was told years and years and years ago, uh, especially during my time in the service working with three-letter agencies and four-letter agencies, was that if you know the name of the organization, that's the organization that's doing fuck all, right? And
I
because
love it. I love it.
it's a propaganda machine, right? And if so, I look at the WEF and go, that's to suck in all the fuckwits and all the idiots. Because if you're sucked in by something that's so obvious that's not in control, right? It means that you're part of the machine. So I look at it this way: There's 30% of the world that are just going to follow, maybe even 40% of the world that's just going to follow and go along with everything. Then there's 40% of the world that are so opposed to everything that happens that they put themselves into so much fear that they think everything's a conspiracy. Then there's the 20% in the middle that are looking at going, you know what, the world is fucked. I don't believe either side. I need to find my own path. But then there's 16,000, 16% of those will never do anything, and there's only 4% that will actually ever do anything. It's the old 80-20 rule. And that's how you pretty much break the world down.
Pretty
And
much.
if you have a look at the controlling party, so when you have a look at the West, right, it is run by to varying degrees, not everywhere. Australia, the Labor Party is a union-based party, and it gets its ideals from a society called the Fabian Society. The Democrats are a union-based society. They get their ideals from the Fabian Society. The leading parties in Germany, France, like the socialist parties, in most of Europe, are all union-led, right? And they have large union memberships that control the bodies, and they're all linked to the Fabian Society. Labour in the UK, the Scottish Nationalists, the Welsh labour movements, they're all connected to the Fabian Society. Most people don't even know the Fabian Society exists. And I've been saying for 20 years, 25 years, that we need to watch out for the Fabian Society, because at one point in time, they're going to have enough power around the world through the Labour movement, right? And that's the Labour Party movement, that they'll be able to enact mass destruction in one hit. And when you have a look at it, during COVID and after COVID, they all got re-elected with larger majorities, and they're all able to gain a stronger foothold and implement the Fabian Society rules, which is socialism.
It's so
Australia,
interesting.
New Zealand, Canada, Germany, France, right? The list goes on and on and on, and when you start tracing the roots, it comes back to one thing. And it's the ideals of the Fabian Society, in my opinion, is what's driving this. And it's been a long march. They've been doing this since the 1930s. They've been training people and indoctrinating people for that long, probably even longer. The Fabian Society actually has roots back to the 1600s, and it's been around for ages and ages and ages. And when you read the ideals of that, and the strange thing is the Fabian University for a long time was run by Sharon Burrows, the ex-ACTU president head in Australia.
Yeah.
So we're a testing ground. Well, from what I can understand, we're the testing ground. Pretty much us and Canada are the two major testing grounds for the rollout of the Fabian playbook. So,
Well, yeah. Well, what I remembered too, and I just was thinking about what we said in 2015. If you actually go through the collapse of the Roman Empire, which we have an eerie similarity to in the West, and the different stages that happened, they hit the point when it was obvious to anyone that the civilization was collapsing. Government started increasing taxes and going feral and just seizing money. And when they start doing that, the next thing was a mass exodus of wealth. And people start moving their money offshore. And then after that, people started leaving Rome. And then Rome goes, shit, we're running out of cash, and they just wouldn't let people take their money out anymore. The same thing as South Africa did in the apartheid regime or Zimbabwe back in the 80s, because I had a friend who he lived there, and when they came to Australia, they couldn't take any money with them because he said they just stopped people taking money out of the country. And what the Roman Empire happened is that, but most people, as you said, like when Rome collapsed, when Zimbabwe collapsed, when Argentina collapsed, when Venezuela collapsed under Maduro, most people don't move too late. And I understand why, because I've been a bit like that at some levels. You get comfortable, you get spoiled by prosperity, you kind of live in a place and you think, look, it's okay, and you start turning a blind eye to obviously stuff that's really, really a problem, and think, no, it will get better. And then you have to hit a point when you go, okay, I still believe it's going to get better, but right now I'd be silly. It's like I'd be silly to drive my car without insurance in the belief that, no, I'm not going to crash it.
Yeah.
I remember I argued with my father when I was 23. He kept insisting I have health insurance. I said, but why do I need it? I said, I'm never going to use it. He goes, not now, but he said, I can assure you at some stage in your life you're going to. He said, do it now while you can get low premiums and hold them in. And best advice he ever gave me. And I remember when I married Grace and we had kids, and I remember realizing that all of my hospital bills were covered by private health. I'm like, oh shit. And then I discovered I had a really bad illness, and then all my stuff was covered through that. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm glad I got this, even though I'm not glad about what's happening. I'm glad I got this. So I think it's just a case of saying, rather than being negative and going, okay, look, we definitely, if nothing else, I'm hoping that there'll be that 4% on this webinar, or hopefully more than 4%, that will go, shit, we better take some action of some kind and start moving towards a plan B or a backup plan for what we're doing so we don't get caught out. And I like what you said about the Fabians and what you were saying. It kind of brought back some memories from the archives, because over 20 years ago, I was fortunate enough to meet a guy who's one of the top secret agents in the underground movement who literally didn't exist. He kind of was off the grid, and I met him through people. And I spent 2 weeks with him, and it changed my life. Like most of what I do today, I learned from him ways to get out of stuff, ways to get out of certain debts and all that. But I've never forgotten what he told me. He said what you said. He said, if it's obvious and in plain sight, it's usually going to be a con. He said, for everything on the internet that's true, there's 10 things that aren't. So he said, and he gave me a few specific things. And like one of the things he said was, like you said, like obvious bodies but seem corrupt, he said, is an example. The other one he was saying to me was, for example, he said all that stuff around a lot of the, there's all this stuff you can go buy your birth certificate back and do all that kind of stuff. He goes, go and try that and see what happens. He said, it's actually easier than that. He goes, there's a natural sovereignty that we've got, which he'd been using. But he was the one who also told me, he said, understand the real culprits. Like he said, the Fabians, he also said the Zionists, he said the Jesuits. He said there's groups behind all this that are really the guys running the show. And they're the ones you got to look at what they're doing. And they're the ones you got to watch out for and see what their plan actually is. And he said, and the bankers always want to create wars because wars make money and profits. And so he said, you just got to, learn to have your backup plans. And remember him saying to me, look, if you're going to choose to play that game in that system, which I don't, he said, you've always got to have a way out the system when you need it. I've never forgotten that, because he said, at some stage, the system turns on you, and if it turns on you, you've got a problem. So
Yeah.
I think it's what we're saying today, not saying we hope that happens, because I hope it never happens in my life. I hope, but all I'm saying today is a crock of shit, but it's a possibility.
And the other side of the coin is, whenever there's large amounts of chaos, there's large amounts of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And being comfortable in one location, well, the opportunities obviously might be somewhere else. Right. From where you are now, in Asia, I honestly believe Asia is the largest opportunity that we're ever going to see. Over 50% of the world's population is within a 4-hour flight of Singapore.
Yeah,
Right.
wow.
So if you did a circle for it, it's a 4-hour flight. That's 50% of the world's population. And it's right on our doorstep. And everyone forgets about it.
Yeah, wow.
5,000 years ago, it was a center of power.
Yeah.
Right. And that is where the power of the world is shifting back there. So if you actually, I don't know who here looks at cycling. So everything's a cycle, and everything's happened before, right? Climate change is a cycle. It's not man-made, right? A volcano farts more CO2 than man's put on the entire planet, right? It's ridiculous. So everything's in cycles, and cycles are long, short, very short, super, super long. All right. Man's been on the planet, say the planet's 20 billion years old, if you believe some people or whatever. I don't know. I wasn't around then. But man's been on it, a 15th of a time over that entire period. And so the planet's it's had the changes. It's had different things. So that's the cycle. Humans have been in and out of cycles, right? if you have a look at the technology that was around during, the Incas and the Aztecs and the Egyptians, that they're now finding stuff in places like Syria and that outdate the Egyptians, and the technology was greater and on par with some of the
Wow.
stuff that we've got today.
Yeah.
Right. And we lose that and then gain it again because everything is a cycle, right? The Greeks fell, the Romans fell, Mesopotamians fell, the Ottomans fell, the British fell. Everyone's had their go at the time. The Chinese, the Mongols, the Russians, and all that. Everyone's had a turn at being the top of the tree. It's just that we're looking at everything through a lens of 100 years or 70 years, depending on how. But if you want to look back 5, 10,000 years, you just see the same thing all over again.
Yeah, it
All
just happens
over
in
again.
cycles.
It just goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Right. And it's typically the same sort of stuff. It's this, I saw there was a comment in the comment section about equality and destruction. Well, equality is destruction. Because if everything is equal, it can't sustain because there isn't an opposite. Right? Why do you think there's man and woman? Why do you think there's right and wrong? Why do you think there's black and white, day and night? Right?
Yeah.
Everything must have an opposite. So if everything is equal, what have you got? Nothing. It's a three-legged stool without three legs. It's fall over. It's broken. Right? And so you can't have equality is a myth. You can't have it. Equality is what is destroying our society.
Yeah, I like that. In fact, there's some questions coming through, so we might start to answer some of them because, and of course, at the end, people are asking about resources for Plan B. We're actually going to be mentioning a masterclass event we're going to be doing in 10 days' time at the end of the podcast, which will be finished in about 30 minutes. First question I got here. With the obvious global powers, is it actually anywhere safe to move to, or are best places to be those with poor infrastructure government control like Mexico, Latin America? I mean, I'll let you comment on that, Steve. Before you do, I can tell you now, my view is that Bali, Thailand, and most of Asia and Philippines is going to be relatively safe. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So if you have a look at the emerging power, it's Asia, right? I've been betting big on Asia pretty much all my life.
I know.
I think Asia is the next major powerhouse and going forward. People, what I say to a lot of people is, if you think certain countries have the worst systems than us, it's because you're comparing everything to here, or you're comparing everything to an ideal that you have about what infrastructure should be, and convenience has created some of the worst problems that we have in the Western world. And convenience is having everything, in these things, right? And so I look at it as what is best for me. So I don't want one of anything. I want several of everything, right? So I want the freedom to be able to stay here in Australia, to go to Asia, to go to the Middle East, and be freely able to roam and live and do whatever I want. I don't want to be just stuck somewhere. And if something changes, then I've got the ability to move or change, right? So we're not saying with anything about the Plan B stuff, it's not that this place is better. It's this place is I'm able to go to, I can live, I can function, I can do whatever I want, but I've got the freedom to move, right? I've got the freedom to get around. If you have a look at Europe, for an instance, 30 years of, 1945, end of World War II through to the mid-50s, Europe was a basket case, right? You go back 200 years after that, it was a basket case again. right? Because of war and all that sort of stuff. We will see another ground war in Europe. That's just natural. It's how the cycle is going to work. Who starts it and where it goes and what happens is we don't know. But there's great places in Europe to go and live, but you want to have the flexibility to be able to move in and out. Same with Central America, Mexico, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Costa Rica, wherever, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay. I was talking to a woman the other day who is looking at moving to Uruguay because it fits. It's similar climate to northern Victoria, sort of southern New South Wales. There, I was speaking to some Australian, they're Iranian, but moved here 30 years ago, who are now looking at moving back to the Middle East because they've seen the changes over there and they can take advantage of that, but they want the option of moving somewhere else, right? So it's having the flexibility that I would say is the better. There's no one place better than another.
I
If
like that. And someone here has written, at what point do you pull the ripcord and leave, or will it actually get to the stage you can't leave? I mean, I do think there's always a risk that you'll get to that stage where it becomes harder. I mean, look at COVID. People got locked up from leaving for a year or two, basically.
Yeah, I look at it a bit different to that. Uh, being uh, being locked down means that you don't have options and choices, right? So I always look at it as even if they lock the borders, I know how to get out of Australia tomorrow and be undetected, right? It's going to be a journey and it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard, but I know that I can get my way into Indonesia. I know where to go into Indonesia to get my second passport stamped with an entry stamp into Indonesia. So I then a free movement, and then I know how to move up through the archipelagos, right? All without taking an aircraft. Right? It's easily doable if you know and know how to do it. It's the reverse smuggling route, basically, and it's open to anyone. These are the things that you need to know. So when do you pull the ripcord out and move? When you've had enough, and it's different for everyone. Some people have gone now, have gone already, left 10 years ago. Some people are now wanting to move. Some won't move for another 3, 4, 5 years. Some may never. Right. It all comes down to you. But before you move, you must know that you must be in a position to have the different choices. Right.
Yeah. So it's really just having choices. A bit like I said, the concept of having that backup option, where you can go, you can choose to stay in Australia for the next 10 years and be okay, or you might go, you know what, this is getting so bad, and you've already got your plan B ready to go. And I can remember seeing very early on during COVID where this was heading. And I was down my doctor because I was an asthmatic as a kid getting a mask exemption. And I remember a number of my friends said, aren't you being a bit extreme? They're not even doing it. I said, I'm sure they will. That was my comment. And when it happened, they all ran to their doctors to get one. And the doctors have been told by that stage, don't do it. So they all said to me, oh, how did you know? I said, I didn't. I just guessed. I said,
Yeah.
I just guess because I think when governments and fear take over, things can happen. So again, my guess is if things keep going the way they're going and there's unearned income tax and they get away with that, then they're going to try something else. I mean, something else, and who knows how far they'll push before people go, enough's enough. And I mean, when I drive around my state, I'm astonished how many cameras there are, Stephen. Like, I'm just like everywhere I go, there's cameras. And the other day, I got the first time it's happened to me, I got a camera photo of me on a like holding my phone, and I was astonished. It literally looked into my car. It could tell everything I was doing, what I was doing, and I thought, you just need the wrong leader in charge, and you can get people for doing things in their car they shouldn't, like having a book that they shouldn't have, or having there's a picture of, say, if they can see a swastika in the background, they go, Nazi hate speech, and the next minute you're arrested. I mean, that's the kind of like and again, I saw this happen recently where that there's two Palestinians. They were not even aware they were being phone called, and they were being baited by that guy. I don't know if you saw that. These two nurses, and then next minute they get
Oh,
charged.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they've basically been deregistered. Now, again, what they said was pretty terrible, but in private conversations, we all say terrible stuff. It doesn't mean we mean it.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's the other thing, political correctness, right? And, being offended and all that sort of stuff now is, yeah, be offended, right? But that's not your right to take my free speech away or to take someone else's free speech away. If you're offended, maybe you need to, take a cup of concrete and harden up, right? The problem is now, and this is part of the destruction and equalization of society, is that if I make everyone offended by anything that someone deems as hurtful, right? Um, all of a sudden you don't say anything. Well, what's that? Well, that's authoritarianism, right? The reason that people want the Nazi symbols banned and all that sort of stuff is because that is the peak of socialism. People really don't realize that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party are socialists. They hated communists. They hated capitalists. They had their own ideal version of what an authoritarian socialist country should have been. And that's what all these people, right, bring in. They all bring in Che Guevara, Castro, the Lee Kuan Yew, not Lee Kuan Yew, the North Korean, got it, just uh, the North Korean dictators, Pol Pot. They all led revolutions saying we're going to make everyone equal, we're going to make everyone really happy, we're going to fix the world for you, and then as soon as they're in, whoosh, gone. Pinochet in Chile. The list is endless of all these people that have all gone around the world doing the same thing, saying that we're going to make you equal. And as soon as you're equal, those that got them there are the first ones gone.
Yeah, well, I remember once what my cousin once said. He goes, "We aren't all created equal. We're just not." He said, "People say it's crap." He said, you can't say that the pedophile or the rapist or the person on the streets who, begs and steals and scams is equal to somebody who's a philanthropist making a difference,
100%. We actually need inequality, right? If you have a look at what drove the West, especially after World War II, it was inequality. It was the underpinning of the British Empire for years and years and years, that aspiration of being able to move up through the ranks. Right?
Well,
The American dream is about moving up through the classes. That's why we had a strong middle class. Without a strong middle class, you don't have anyone to rule over. So by just getting rid of the middle class, you've just got serfs.
yeah,
Mm.
gosh, it's a good thought, I mean, I, yeah, you can see there's so much of this, and then people believe it because it sounds good, what you're saying, rather than just facing the facts. There's always going to be rich and poor. There's always going to be, and one of the realities of that is that by having inequality, you got something to aim for, because discontent and ambition in a healthy way can actually drive progress. Like,
Yeah.
imagine if everyone was equal and happy. I mean, look at the Garden of Eden. I always say, look at the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. It literally, imagine, Stephen, we had a shimmering being turn up and say to us, "You two guys can eat wherever you want. You can go wherever you want. You can stay in whatever resort you want anywhere in the world." And we're like, okay, what limits are? There's none. Like anything, yeah, penthouse, you can stay in the Sultans. The only thing you can't do, you can't go to Thailand, and you can't go to this particular resort because it will not be good for you. The human nature goes, eventually, when you get bored going having everything you want, you go, I wonder what it's actually like in Thailand. And eventually you're going to go and have a little bit of you're going to think, it's like the fairy tale of Bluebeard. I don't know if you've heard about, but the story of Bluebeard was about a great king who married this girl, and he gave her everything in the house, the palace, his kingdom. But he said, you cannot go down in the locked room downstairs. And if you ever go in there, I will know. And it will be the end of you. And of course, she went in there and she saw all his dead bodies and all that. And it's a bit of a story, but the whole point is we naturally are discontented and want that. And look, it's not a terrible thing if it drives progress to do better. It's a terrible thing if our discontentment creates rage and jealousy. So we want to knock down the people off their blocks, which is kind of what's happening here now, rather than saying, let healthy discontent make you, better. Like when I used to play snooker against my cousin, we used to hate losing to each other, and we just got better and better because we loathed it. And I was like that in tennis. I loathed losing. And even I get annoyed when some of my close friends in business are doing better than me. I'm kind of going like, shit, I'm smarter than them. And I'm like, I've got to do better than them. And but when you get in the trouble is when you go, oh man, I hope he fails. And subconsciously you start sabotaging that person. And I think we've got that going on a lot with socialism in Australia. We've got this whole thing of trying to knock people down.
Well, the other thing is imagine if Australia was all equal, every state in Australia was equal, and it was all like Victoria.
Yeah.
Like I hate Victoria. My personal opinion, I just think it's the shithole of Australia, right? And if there was a place in Australia that I could send Donald Trump's B2s to, it would be Victoria in my mind. I don't want Queensland to turn into Victoria. I want the inequality between the states. And the amount of Victorians moving up here is just absolutely, it's disgusting. I want them to fuck off back to Victoria because they come up here, they vote fucking socialist, right? So it's like, we need the equality. And if you actually have a look when Australia was federalized, federalization was to create inequality between the states to allow competition. Competition is just another word for inequality. Because this tax system is different to this tax system. Well, that's inequality, but it's competition, right?
Yeah.
Freedom to live here and the freedom to live there, right, under different rules is inequality. It's competition. Right?
Yeah.
So you have no drive to succeed if you don't have inequality. And that is what the socialists, especially the likes of the Fabian and all that sort of stuff, that's why they like everyone's got to be equal. Well, because it means it's the destruction of society.
Yeah, I read a very,
I think you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have everything else.
Yeah, I posted a really good thing from Holly Valance. I don't know if you've heard of her, but I posted one from her. She, what did she say? Let me find it. She gave one of the best quotes on this and wokeness. She said, everyone starts off as a lefty early in life, and then they eventually wake up after making money, working, trying to run a business and buy a property, and then they realize what a bunch of shit, I mean, I'm using paraphrase or crap ideas, they all are. And I thought that was a great quote. In other words, it's very easy to be a socialist when you don't have any money, and then it means you get somebody else's money. But it's very rare. I mean, there are a few exceptions of people who have a lot of money and who are more socialist, but they're the exceptions rather than the rule.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ones that are socialists, take, the George Soros of the world and all the idiots in Hollywood and all that sort of stuff. They're just useful idiots for the cause, right? Because they think they'll be honoured when the end game comes of total control, right? So the end game of socialism, I think someone just posted up there, what is the end game of socialism? The end game of socialism is a small group of people that think that they are godlike, controlling everyone else. That's all it is. It is a power game. It is literally simply, I think I'm better than you. I had this conversation with a senator that's now a senator. And I said to him, I don't fear the current politician because I know that they are corrupt and stupid. I fear the person that wants to become a politician because they obviously think that they're better than me and they want to control me. It's as
Interesting.
simple as that. In this environment where we are now, the only reason that people become a politician is power and control.
Mm.
So
Well,
fear anyone that wants to become a politician.
no, this is good. So, okay, so let's just, as we're getting towards the last 15 minutes, there's a
Mhm.
few questions that are practical. Like people are asking some practical questions, which we'll just answer before we share about the event. Like one question from Graham is about happy living in Australia, but wish to store cash and precious metals offshore, and whether places like Singapore, Thailand, and Switzerland safe countries to store wealth away from socialism. Now, obviously, we're going to cover that in the event, but any
Yeah.
brief kind of teaser comments you can give on that, Stephen?
Um, Stay away from Switzerland for physical storage. Um, my mind, Asia, Singapore, is
Yeah.
probably the
The,
best.
the for me, the general teaser I'd say, Graham, is the concept is good. I think that the whole reason that you have money offshore is that you hope you don't need to have it offshore and it's a waste of money. But let's just say that the AI, but they test new AI social credits in Australia, and one day you can't access any of your money in Australia because of that. Well, you'd be very glad you got money offshore. So it's kind of like a backdrop in case things happen. So it's a bit like not just putting all your money in XRP because you believe if XRP fails, you're fucked. If it does well, you're a billionaire, but if it fails, you're fucked. So you put money across gold, silver, shares, cash, just because if something fails, like a plane, I'm more comfortable than a plane with 5 engines and one with one for that same reason. So if a couple of them fail, you're okay. So the reason that you have this stuff at a plan B with your wealth and still living in Australia is, yeah, in case Australia really does go batshit crazy on a way that none of us predicted, and you've got some money sitting offshore. That's how I see it.
Yeah. The other side of that is it's about choice again, right? So having total choice about um, where you control what you're doing, right? It's jurisdictional arbitrage is probably the best way of putting it. So
Yep. Okay, so another question. Rob asked about moving assets into a foundation. And again, the same kind of thing. That's a strategy. It's one thing, but of course, we'll be sharing at the event how even not for profits have just announced a 999 million budget for more compliance on them and looking more closely. And although they're still a good option, I mean, yeah, I mean, basically, that's one strategy among many. Is that a fair comment to say? And it depends on your situation and why you want to have your money.
say that again, mate. Sorry, it
Okay.
just
What I'm saying is that Rob asked about moving all your assets into a foundation, if that's a way of protecting it. Now, in general, that's one option.
yeah,
But my comments I'd make on that would be, well, number one, you've got to ask what your goals are because you're tied up with certain regulations on that if you're in a foundation anyway, in terms of philanthropic. And then secondly, again, the ATO or the government are looking at foundations more closely. So you've got to make sure you've got the compliance things well in hand.
yeah. Now, an Australian said there's different foundations around the world, right? So you can have an offshore foundation, you can have an onshore foundation, and they can do different things. That the aim of a foundation is actually doing charitable good, right?
Yeah.
So if your entire aim about setting up a foundation is purely and simply you want to park your assets there and never want to do anything charity, well, that you'll be shut down in a heartbeat. So it's actually about making sure that you can that you are doing good, and it's a long-term uh, strategy as well because it's about generational wealth. It's about moving money, not money, sorry. It's about moving assets and the ability to create change over multiple generations. It is really what a foundational strategy is about. So
No, this is good. I mean, a couple of other questions before we share about the event. Someone asked a good question about moving their money offshore without alerting the authorities to try and prevent. I think the answer to that, and tell me if you agree, Stephen, is that, well, it's like early in COVID was a good time to be getting masks exemptions or getting your plan in place because no one cared, whereas they cared. Yeah, right now, you can move money offshore without much problem. I mean, you do, if you move it over to the Cayman Islands and write down crypto, then you might get stopped. But Otherwise, you're right. You can move money offshore now and protect wealth without much problem. It's just that right now you can do it, but in future that could change. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, but yeah, and I don't care about alerting the authorities. If I'm doing
Um,
everything legally, I'm doing everything for the right intent. In a way, I want to alert the authorities because maybe it's a wake up call. So take what happened in, was it the Netherlands? They brought the law in where they increased the tax on the top, 1 or 2% of the population was supposed to bring in $150 billion, right? What happened is all the wealth moved and it cost the country 500 billion, right? So, and then all of a sudden they've totally revamped all their tax laws to bring those billionaires and bring all that money back on shore. And what they worked out is it wasn't the 1% that all moved, it was the guys in the next 10 to 15% that moved because they went, oh fuck, if they're going to target them, we're next. Right. So that can be a way to shake the economy, the politicians up, is take away what they thrive for, control of money, right? Because they're spending it really unwisely, right? And that's what they do is because they have no, because it's not, they've never earned the money that they're spending. They just think it's, that's why they're going after unrealized capital gains. That's why they'll come after trusts and assets outside of trust vehicles and stuff like that. That's why they'll look at all different structures, and it's in Jim Chalmers's uh, notes and everything. Like they're not hiding what they're going to do. So you can actually move your money offshore in a way that is 100% legal, 100% ethical. But if you alert government, who cares? Right? It may be the wake up call that they need. So,
I like that. So basically, what I might do now, Stephen, is just mention the event and what we're going to be doing and get you to share, because we're looking at doing a half-day masterclass or workshop where we're going to really go into this, because a lot of people are asking, how do we set up a plan B? How do we do this? How do we get digital nomad visas, or how can we get ourselves a backup? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be launching a program at that event anyway, which will involve teaching on everything from protecting your wealth offshore as well as onshore. If you want to move offshore, getting a second passport, trying to make, having options, which is going to be a cost affordable one, which you can have, or basically consultations. We've almost got the videos and everything together. This event, though, will be a good starter for you. So it's for people who want to take action and just learn the mechanics. So it'll be very much educational. We'll be teaching you things like about how to protect your wealth. We'll be teaching about things like how you can move offshore if you want to move offshore, where you can store money offshore, all the kind of practical questions and things that people are asking today. And if you've got any others, of course, which you want to be covered, you can always email us, and then we can be aware of what needs to be covered. Any comments what you'll be teaching about event, Steve?
yeah, I'll be going over the five flag theory. I'll cover that,
Yep.
which is the thing. I'll cover different citizenship options, residency options, and other bits and pieces. Warren and I will have a chat over the next couple of days to finalise what we're all doing. But a lot of things around stuff that you can put in place now that is that doesn't cost a lot of money and most people can access. Like most people can access a second passport. It's amazing how many people can actually access a second passport in Australia. How that you might be able to make your current business mobile, right? There's a lot of people out there that are in businesses and have never ever thought about making their business mobile. So that's it. But I've just seen a comment here that I've heard some people talking about taking to the seas, i.e., buy a boat. Is that viable? Costs and that. Yes, if you've got a shitload of money. Boats the acronym for boat is break out another 1,000. I wouldn't do it on a individual boat, but there is residential cruise ships and residential floating vessels now. I've been looking into this quite heavily over the last few years about whether it is actually a viable option. And the good thing is, though, and it happens with people that are living on cruise ships, and that's becoming a very big, especially in the Caribbean with Americans. It's becoming a very advanced way of retirement in some ways. And when I say retirement, it doesn't mean that uh, that you have to be over 55 and retired. There's people in their 20s and 30s doing this as well. And the thing with a cruise ship is, if the cruise, say you live on a cruise ship for more than 183 days, which is normally where you become tax resident, you become tax resident in theory wherever the ship is registered. So most of the cruise ships around that are doing that allow you to live on them are registered in Nassau, the Bahamas. They're registered in the jurisdictions that are zero or very low tax, are territorial tax systems. That's why the cruise companies register their ships there, because when they're in international waters, they don't have to pay tax or, abide by a jurisdiction. They just have to abide by the international maritime rules. So you become in a way resident of that country via the ship that you live on. That would be the way to do the living at sea. There's Seabourn Cruises is one of just the world is the most famous residential cruise ship. There's 4 or 5, I think, that have been done now. I know you can buy a cabin very soon on um, the not the Four Seasons, the St. Ritz cruise ship, which is a high-end cruise ship, but it just goes to show you that these residentials are opening up to luxury brands who are now looking for people that want to be sort of nomadic in their life, but sort of still want to be resident.
Well, you can cover all that at the event, can't you, Stephen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So what we're doing is going to be the 12th of July. People have asked, is it going to be recorded? And the answer is yes. So for those who can't come, and the recording will be available for up to 30 days after the event. So that's fine. So it will be recorded. Some have asked, will it be relevant if I'm planning to stay in Australia? It certainly will, because we're going to be, we acknowledge that probably more than half of you would rather stay put and hope it works out. But at least you can have a backup plan to some level by building some wealth offshore, and even possibly in some of your places, just setting something in place which you can use in case you need it. So for some, small number, I would suspect would be saying, yep, we do want to move offshore and get a second home now if we need it. The majority will probably not want to do that, but at least put something in place or know what you have to do if you need to do something. So that's what we'll be covering. The cost is $127, but there's an early bird price. If you type in early bird at the checkout, and then you'll get $97, which is going to be available until the end of tomorrow. So you got basically today or 24 hours. If you're already a paid Ignite member and your membership is current or whatever, just email us and we'll let you know if you're eligible to come for free. Because if you're Ignite members or VIP, you can come for free if your membership's still current. So anyway, just raise a hand or whatever, or give a message if you're planning to come, just so I've got some idea. Raise your hand, or yep, a few of you, and or chat. Yeah, look, it's going to give you valuable knowledge and stuff for your future, and whether or not you, and the aim is we're going to make it very simple. So for some of you who really don't want to do much, it's going to be about micro-stepping, which what we mean by micro-stepping is just giving you simple steps to do. For some of you, all that might be necessary is just setting up something offshore and buying some gold offshore. That's all you might do, and having some cash overseas. Some of you might just, all you want to know what to do, and yet you got an action plan ready to go. Some of you may want to go, you know what, I also want to at least look at what's involved in becoming a non-resident and moving offshore. So the idea is that Stephen and I will be micro-stepping it for you, so you will know basically what you're going to be doing. So now there's still more questions, but we've run out of time. I promised we'd be finished by now. So we're going to be having it at basically 9 o'clock Perth time, or actually I think 8:30. Sorry, no, 9 o'clock Perth time, which is 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. It'll be for 4 hours. So 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you won't have to give up too much of your day. If you watch AFL, you can still watch a game or two. And if you like to have a long breakfast and sleep in, you can do that as well. Although you can't sleep in as much if you're in Perth, but most people don't live in Perth. I'm probably one of the exceptions. So thanks for coming, Stephen. I appreciate you having you here. And
I'll just say one more thing is, when we talk about jurisdictional arbitrage, and we'll cover more of this in the
sorry to
thing.
interrupt you, Steve, but I'll just put it in the chat, the link and the early bird and everything. Yep, keep going, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when we talk about jurisdictional arbitrage, don't forget that you don't have to stay in the current state that you're living in. If you don't like living in Victoria, move. If you don't like living in Queensland, in my opinion, you're a fool. It's God's country over here. But move. If you don't like living in the north of the state, but the south of the state might be better, move. And have a look at where you are, right? And then take because a jurisdictional arbitrage can be as simple as moving different councils. A friend of mine runs farms and is into regenerative farming, and her and her husband, they couldn't get what they wanted in one council area, but they found out that they could in another. So they sold their farm in one and bought the farm in the other. Voila. And it was 200 kilometres apart, right? And they played jurisdictional arbitrage on a council level, right? So we forget sometimes that it can be as simple as moving, 20 minutes up the road. So
I like that.
Yeah.
So just a couple of other questions. Someone said, can we buy the event to purchase the videos when it comes? The answer is absolutely. The event is online on Zoom. That's where it's on for the question that's asked here. So yeah, if you buy tonight or by tomorrow, it's $97. Otherwise, it'll be $127. A few have asked where the email is. The email is on the landing page. You will see, for those of you who might think who are current members. Otherwise, I've written it in the chat. So thank you for coming, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you at the event. So thanks for me. Okay, bye for now.
See ya.